Welcome to episode 32 of the Comic Watcher Show. Our usual host Cody is down with a sick kid today, so I'm here leading our expert team of excellent fans to yet another resounding victory, I'm sure. I am John Jack, and joining me today are...
This is Matt coming from Oklahoma City.
Hey everyone, I'm Nicholas coming from all the way out in Carthage, Texas. Look for me on Instagram and Twitter at OscorpNicholas.
And we are going to have Nick handle news this week. You want to let us know what's going on in the world of comics this week?
Yeah, let's just get right into it. So artist Brian Segman gave us our first look at the upcoming Marvel Comics event, Absolute Carnage, this morning on Twitter. Written by Donnie Cates with inks by J.P. Mayer, colors by Frank Martin, and letters by Clayton Cowles. The series will see Cletus Cassidy, a.k.a. Carnage, make his grand return to New York in a blistering 60-page issue set to hit comic stores everywhere on August 7th. Switching over to DC Comics, writer Tom King has had a busy week. After the news broke that he would be leaving the Batman ongoing series, DC announced his story would continue in a Batman Catwoman 12-issue series coming sometime in 2020. Director Ava DuVernay also recently took to Twitter to announce that Tom King has been brought on board to write the upcoming DC Comics film The New Gods, alongside herself. While the film is expected to be based heavily on the classic Jack Kirby comics from the early 70s, there have been no details released as of yet. In a bit of not-so-shocking news, DC Comics recently announced they'll be stopping all double-shipped or bi-weekly books starting in 2020. Current double-ship books include titles such as Batman, Detective Comics, The Flash, Wonder Woman, and Justice League, but starting next year, all of DC titles will release a maximum of one issue per month. Finally, the DC Universe original series Swamp Thing is set to premiere Friday the 31st, exclusively on the DC Universe streaming app. From executive producer James Wan, the series stars Andy Bean as a scientist, Alec Holland, Derek Mears as a Swamp Thing, and Crystal Reed as Abby Arcane. Be sure to subscribe and check it out. And that's all for news.
All right. Exciting week in the world of comics, that's for sure. This week we are going to be talking Batman, Last Night on Earth from DC Comics, Coda from Boom Studios. I can never remember that name right off the top of my head. And the Hunted arc out of Amazing Spider-Man from Marvel Comics, of course. So we're going to kick it off with Batman Last Night on Earth, which is by Scott Snyder, with pencils by Greg Capullo, inks by Jonathan Glapion, colors by FC Opposencia, and letters by Tom Napolitano. Batman, and this is going to be the start of a Black Label series, so it's going to be in that Black Label format, and they're a bit longer issues. So the issue kicks off with Batman driving to a murder in Crime Alley at the center of a outline of murders that all make a giant Batman, and there's a mummified ass looking Bruce Wayne kid at the spot where his parents were murdered, and when he walks up to him, the body's booby-trapped, pulls a gun, and shoots him. And that apparently is just kind of thrown aside for Batman to end up in an Arkham Asylum following years of therapy, apparently, according to the asylum, his doctor, who's the Joker. I'm a little bummed they didn't name him Joe Care or something like that. They didn't have a very good Joker name. But he wakes up and his doctor says some combination of pills has been successful in knocking him out of psychosis. He meets Alfred, who leads him to believe that all of his doctors over the years have been all of his rogues over the years have been his doctors. It's a little, and then Alfred reveals it yet again. We flip the script again, and now it's Old Man Batman in a post-apocalyptic world where, like, from the sound of things, Lex Luthor managed to turn everyone over to Doom, which is what he's trying to do in Justice League currently, actually. So this could be considered a postscript to a worst-case scenario spinning out of Justice League, which is pretty interesting. But so it's a world where Lex Luthor convinced your everyday people to become, you know, evil, not necessarily evil, just convinced them that doom is the way, and they killed all the heroes that they could, and when they were done doing that, they also turned on Luthor and all of the villains. And for some reason now the world is destroyed. Uh, no reason is given for that.
Because there were no heroes.
That's true.
Maybe there was no Hawkman, and those big Gundams from his book showed up, kicked everyone's ass.
That's funny. That is not a terrible possibility. But this is not it is revealed this is not the original Batman. This is actually a spin-off, a reference to Super Heavy, which followed. Oh God, was it Endgame? Was that the name of the?
Yeah.
Which followed Bruce Wayne losing his memory in Endgame, and it's a machine that Batman built that basically recreates a Batman, memories and all, every generation, so that there will always be a Batman. In order to make Batman, to coin a term that Snyder likes to throw around sometimes, and Tinian, eternal. See what I did there? So I thought this was a pretty fun issue. It definitely did a lot of world building, and a very Old Man Logan, Old Man Hawkeye, Old Man Quill, old woman Lady Harley, and dozens of other things way. But still, it's neat to get a all-star creative team working on something like this. It seems like a lot of those series have gone kind of to the wayside and getting kind of left behind a little bit. I will say it feels like very typical Scott Snyder. The core work feels exactly like Scott Snyder's story. Nothing's as it seems. It's the one thing Batman didn't prep for. He doesn't know anything. It's basically, as of now, it's a very similar plot to the Court of Owls. And it's always, it's Snyder, so it'll be dark for, I guess if this is 3 issues, 2.5 issues, and then the last half of the last issue, Superman will come back and save everybody or something. What did you think about it, Nick?
Well, I'm a longtime fan of Snyder and Capullo, so I've been following this one for a long time, and I was hyped for it, and to me it lived up to expectations. These two understand Batman on a fundamental level, and I think The Last Night on Earth is a testament to this. One of the most common aspects of Bruce Wayne this creative team has explored in the past is essentially the mental health of Bruce Wayne during his crusade as the Dark Knight. I know there are always jokes about the guy who dresses up as the Bat and fights crime and shit, but Snyder and Capullo have always taken that concept to the next level. Like you said, going back to the Court of Owls in 2011 at the start of New 52, the key point was to take something that Bruce thought he knew really well in Gotham City and tear that understanding down completely. So to put Bruce in a situation where his reality isn't correct, he doesn't need to understand someone else's reasons for doing something. He's trying to reevaluate his own level of understanding. And we went through this from the start of the Court of Owls all the way through Endgame, like you said, and into the Gordon, Robot, Bunny, Batman period. They consistently.
Oh God! If Rookie shows up in this, I'm gonna get so damn excited. Like, just finally that shit comes back around.
Finally, right?
3 years later, 4 years later, it comes back around. I don't even care. I wouldn't even be mad. I'd be like, "Oh my God, there's Rookie."
But they've kind of used this to always separate Batman from Bruce Wayne and explore that dichotomy and that duality. So they're breaking down the worldview that drives this hero and exploring his fundamental sense of duality and the crusade that he has taken on and who he is as Bruce Wayne. So going all the way to The Last Night on Earth, it's ultimately a disintegration of everything Bruce thought he knew. It uses what Snyder and Capullo have been toying with all these years and just pushes it to an entirely new level with probably, at least as far as I can imagine, the furthest you can take a concept like this. But it's also something that they've earned the right to do after all these years. I mean, how do you take Batman to a place mentally, like you said, that he couldn't prepare for? They always kind of go back to that because that's what Batman is known for. Well,
I mean, they did
one
that in Court of Owls and 0 Year, Death of the Family.
definitely they've toyed with that concept a lot of different ways, and I think, like I said, I think this is kind of as far as you can push it. So it makes sense that this is being marketed as their last team up on the Batman title. It's just, like I said, something they've earned, but the best way to do that, I think, is to just reveal that he's been in the Arkham Asylum for 20 years now, and that everything he's done has been to escape a much more cruel fate as Bruce Wayne. But this twist is to show that this more cruel reality that Bruce Wayne's dealing with will almost certainly be the foundation which Batman shows his importance and maybe even his destiny. It could be his last time as Batman in this post-apocalyptic world. But it's a great fucking book. I could talk about it for days. It's got a lot of stellar art, and I know that a lot of cool things are to come. It's just one that you got to check out for yourself.
Well, if they ran him through the machine, this could be an entirely new Batman. This could be a random person who stumbled across the machine and got brainwashed, and now they're Batman.
Absolutely.
That's the kind of machine it was.
They're dealing with like the legacy of Batman, so this could even be as that comes to an end.
Yeah.
Who knows? But Matt, you want to take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I fell somewhere between you guys on this one. I didn't love it on your level, Nick, and I think I liked it better than you did, John. It's a beautiful book to look at. Greg Capullo really just shines as an artist when he is working with Scott Snyder. They have an obvious chemistry that leaps off the page. Excuse me. Even if the inks themselves are maybe a little more crisp than I would personally like, I can't say that it's a bad look at all. So kind of digging into a point you were making there, Nick, Snyder and Capullo's run has been all about extremes of Batman, pushing, Batman to the extreme of his understanding, or past his extreme, pushing the Joker to a new extreme a couple different times. And really using that to look at who Batman is, what makes him tick, why is he so awesome, why is he so quote unquote eternal, and eternal in his popularity. And I was reading this interesting interview with the pair of them yesterday, and they were saying that, or rather Scott Snyder was saying that when he was first taking over the Batman books, it was right after Grant Morrison was sort of winding his run down, and Morrison had told him that you have to treat this character for however long you're on the book as his birth, his life, and his death of the character. And because the character is going to live on, but you want to be able to look back on your time and say, I did a beginning, a middle, and an end of this character's story. So 0 Year, which I absolutely think is the highlight of the Snyder Capullo run, is the birth, everything in the middle there. Everything else is the middle, and now we come to the end, the quote-unquote death, maybe real, maybe metaphorical, of Batman with Last Night on Earth. So, having said that, there's a lot of stakes, a lot of sense of closure, and I felt like the book fell just a little bit short of its own ambitions in that regard. This isn't the first time that in several media that I can think of that we've come across a story where our protagonist finds out that the narrative of their life might be completely wrong because they've been living in an asylum the whole time. And I think, I don't want to pin anything on a lack of originality, but I was kind of just hoping, at least from that aspect, that I would get something a little more original, a little more unique, a little more definitive about Batman, and eventually maybe the dynamic and relationship between he and the Joker to go. And I mean, maybe we'll still get there. It's only the first issue, and it wasn't a bad issue by any means. It just didn't knock me off my feet like I was hoping. And, I mean, that's more about me than the book itself. It's not a bad book at all. Do I personally want to spend $8 on it because of its oversized formatting and extra pages? No, I really don't. I'll probably wait for the trade on it. But I do intend on buying it because Snyder Capullo on Batman is awesome. Oh, is it regular? Oh, I can't. Oh, okay. It's kind of blurry, Nick. I don't know why, but I don't know. But anyway, I don't have just a heck of a lot to add other than I like the idea of bringing closure to the birth, life, and death of Batman in terms of the Snyder Capullo long form story they've been telling, which does include metal, like it or not. I love
like
metal, even if it fell short at the end.
Metal was great. I
actually adore metal.
Yeah.
I do feel like towards the end it got a little slow, not because the story was slow, but because it was releasing behind schedule.
Exactly. Yeah, the release.
It lost a lot of momentum. Yeah,
it did.
The last the last 2 issues lost just almost all the event's momentum. It started so strong, and it ended strong too. But
it really did. Mm-hmm. But no, I look forward to finishing reading this story. I think it's going to end on a very high note. I do like the fact that it seems to be bringing to a head the long dangling plot line of the successive generations of cloned Bruce Waynes. I just absolutely love that idea. So that there's always a Batman. That's a fucking awesome idea. And yeah, hey. Let's see where it goes. So, John, final thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was. I think I gave my thoughts for the most part, but yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna host this week, damn it. You have to be
buying it. I'm gonna continue buying it. I don't dislike it, but I'm definitely not super blown away from first impression. But I am ready for number 2 to really excite me somehow. Moving on to Coda. Coda is a 12-issue series from Boom Studios, written by Cy Spurrier, with art by Matthias Bergara, with additional colors by, oh God, what is that word? Mike Dora? I'm sorry if I said that wrong. And letters by Jim Campbell. Sorry, there's some tough names in there. Coda is a relationship, like an introspective relationship drama comedy set in a post-fantasy world. It examines the ups and downs, ins and outs of a relationship, and kind of goes to show us that no relationship is truly ideal. And so it's a really interesting story. Initially, it is a bard named Hum living in a world where some catastrophic event a few years before. So some catastrophic event has destroyed magic in a world that is completely dependent on it. So it's no less impactful than, a movie where nuclear bombs destroy the world and, knock out all the electronics for us. We're very dependent on electronics in this world. They're very dependent on magic. And in this world, a bard named Hum is looking for his wife. But complications ensue. Basically, a war has started over a last font of magic. And eventually he does find his wife. And that isn't the end of the story, surprisingly. There's just so much more. And it was great. I also wanted to mention the single issues for this series, if you can get them, are hands down the highest quality single issues I've ever seen. Interior pages are cardstock. The cover is thicker than most trades for each single issue. There's, stuff in the back. There's interesting little stuff. It is just, they're phenomenal single issues. I have not gotten into the trades or anything like that, but I assume they're likewise probably pretty super high quality. What'd you think of it, Nick?
I wasn't sold on it initially when we were talking about it, and I was looking into it. It was this post-magic apocalyptic fantasy that they wanted you to think in the vein of Mad Max and Lord of the Rings. When I opened it up, that's not what I got from it. It was a fantasy book, but the art was really busy, and they didn't sell the relationship concept immediately, so it took a few issues to get to that. But from the moment that we actually learn about Hum and his relationship with his wife, I thought the comic just became something else entirely, and that's kind of when it hooked me, and I jumped into it. It's just a really relatable story about their relationships and the ups and downs, and not only our perceptions of our place within a relationship, but of each other as well. And I think the references to classics like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that were fun, but it was the relationship dynamics that ultimately won me over on it. I said the art was just okay. It wasn't something that I was really excited for every issue and constantly looking forward to it. It had some good splash pages, and it helped with the world building, I guess is the nicest way I could put it. It fit within it, and I could accept it. It didn't ruin the book for me or anything like that. But what kept me coming back was that relationship between Hum and his wife. And when the twist happened about halfway through it, when he goes looking after her to fix her, quote unquote, and she flips that script, I thought the comic just took off from there, and I was a huge fan from that point on. So while it started off a little slow, I think by the last few issues, I was just one after another. So it was a good time. But that's pretty much all my thoughts on that one. It's 12 issue limited series, so maybe there'll be more, but that was a pretty definitive end, and it's definitely worth checking out. And maybe, like John said, the single issues. So I'll look into it. Matt, you want to take over?
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't just not like the first couple issues. I absolutely hated the first couple issues when I was like, man, these guys are on crack talking about how good the story is. Because it just feels like Spurrier is throwing so much at you at a constant rate. And this pacing is not slowing down, and you're getting this whole world building thrown at you. And who the hell is this guy Hum? Wait, is that his name, Hum? Like, it took me probably till issue 3 or 4 to realize, oh, okay, yeah, he is called Hum. Once it slows down, and it happens somewhere around 3 or 4, and starts taking time to just actually spend with the characters, that's when the story becomes what it is. You could set aside all of the magical tropes and what was the phrase about the comrades going off as a group together and they're all gung-ho about it.
The plucky fellowship.
The plucky fellowship.
Oh man, that was some beautiful shade thrown.
Once it starts kind of disseminating all that and breaking it up and breaking it down, that's when it starts going. But yeah, like Nick was saying, about halfway through, or maybe a little more, the heart of the story, which is really about Hum and his wife Circa, really, really flips everything. And it becomes apparent that what we're reading in really everything that's going on is, especially with their relationship, is a metaphor for a toxic relationship or trying to cope with somebody that you love, but maybe they have an addiction or something like that. And once that all flips into place, the story just completely turns on its head, and you realize that you weren't reading the story you thought you were at all. And I almost, if I'd had time, I probably would have done this. But I almost at that point wanted to go back to number one and start over, knowing everything that I knew. And I probably at some point still will. But yeah, it's a great story about relationships. It's a story about stories and about the fallacies of trying to live up to idealized aspirations of roles in society, roles in a relationship, so on and so forth. And it really turned out to be an awesomely well done comic that just really, really snuck right up on me. The art was really good. I thought it really fit the story well, but it had a weird inconsistency to it where, like, the double splash pages are awesome, gorgeous, poster worthy even, but then a lot of the single splash pages were so chaotic. Like, I had to hold my tablet back to try to figure out what the hell I was looking at because it was just such a mess. Let's see, right around issue 6 maybe, when Circa does that splash page of Circa hitting the suit of armor that had the goblins in it. I don't know what the hell's going on in there. And I mean, it's not like every issue or anything. It's just an occasional thing. It's hardly a deal breaker. And when it comes to, I'm actually going to borrow a line. I'm going to quote Cody a little bit on this because he made a point about this in our group chat. And when it comes to art on indie books, it should almost be graded on a different scale than on a book from the big two, because they have a lot more leeway to be themselves and to tailor their art to the story, whereas in a lot of mainstream books, the art is made to fit a certain house style or dynamic and be a lot less unique and independent. Like, I could never see this guy trying a Justice League book or anything like that. Hey, maybe he will someday. But yeah, it was a really cool, really surprising, very, very heartfelt and almost painfully well thought out book. I was very pleasantly surprised by Coda. John, back over to you.
So for final summation of Coda, I feel like the first few issues he was writing these letters to his wife as he's looking for her, and we picture, this maiden, this beautiful ideal, and when we find her, she's an Urkin. She's an orc, basically. She's not this, she's borderline abusive at times. She's mean to him pretty often. She blows him off, and that's when you start to realize this isn't about an idealized relationship. It's about the end of an idealized relationship. Not the end of the relationship, but I'm sure we've all had that time where we're fighting with our significant other, and then maybe you hear a love song or something, watch a show with some, I watch The Simpsons a lot. There's a lot of sweet stuff in The Simpsons. But, and you go like, is that what relationship's supposed to be? And, there's days where it's like that, but there's also days where it's fucking hard. And that's what this book it's okay those days when it's hard. And that's when I realized the setting of the book is almost as important as the characters, because this is a world that's post-magic or post-fantasy, or, whatever you want to call it. God damn it. All of those are, if I touch my screen, it swipes screens around. Basically, all of those are things that could be considered to be that time in your relationship where, the honeymoon phase is over and it starts to become work. Post magic, after the magic is over, after the fantasy is over. There aren't always easy answers, and this is a world that's had to come to realize that.
Yeah, I think in that same sense, like, it's also about the idealized concepts of his wife that Hum has built up in his head. I think it wasn't so much on Circa's side. She was just like, this is who I am.
And she was saying that the whole time.
Yeah, and he's on this quest to get her back, because when the demon has her, it's just not right, and he has to fix her. and do all these
Mm.
things, and she's not really about that. So that toxicity, it's about where that's coming from in that relationship. So in a sense, the first few issues are a bit slow, but maybe it has to do that to establish that dynamic that maybe is a bit more relatable, and then it subverts those expectations for the relationship, and that's why the twist works so well.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that old thing of, saving the snake and the snake bites you, and, hey man, you knew I was a snake.
Absolutely.
Well, and there, Hum has what he thinks are noble ambitions and trying to fix, to use his word, his wife, but his ultimate realization towards the end of the story that his motives were selfish because he was trying to fix her rather than help her, which that's a very key difference. That's huge. That defines their relationship right there. And the bloom is off the rose, and he didn't realize it until the big twist happens halfway through. And so, I mean, I almost there was that pirate girl that kept being really interested in Hum, and I was kind of wondering for a while, is something actually going to go on between these two? Just
They
because
could have easily went that route.
Yeah, she kept coming
there.
back.
Yeah.
It could have, but it didn't, and that's cool. I like that because I mean that just goes to show that the heart of the story is, like you guys were saying, relationships take work, and they don't come easy. And if there's something going on with self-destructive or whatever with your significant other, you can't just fix it. You have to help them, and that takes both people working together, not just one. So, yeah, awesome book.
All right. Well, if no one's got anything else, I believe we're on to Amazing Spider-Man's Hunted arc. I know nobody's excited. Which is written by Nick Spencer with art. I'm just doing the credits for the last issue because I didn't want to look up every issue. All the HU issues had different teams and stuff like that. I apologize if anybody listening to this worked on a book and isn't credited. There's probably like 15, 20 people who worked on these books all told. There were 3 different pencilers, I think, in the arc, in the main series, not counting the HU issues, which were all different. Sorry. Just a little aside. It's written by Nick Spencer with art by Humberto Ramos, inks by Victor Olazaba, colors by Edgar Delgado and Eric Arcienega, and colors by VC's Joe Caramagna. So, Craven, who's been teased since the start of the Spider-Man series, has basically allowed himself to be contracted by a bunch of rich folk who are using robot bodies built by Arcade to hunt animal-themed villains who are going against the spirit of their animals. And this week brings us the last issue. What'd you think about it, Matt?
Well, I've been reviewing this entire story for the site, and so I've had quite a bit of time to think of it. I'll try not to monopolize the conversation too much. But one thing that, setting the stage here, it's important to remember that Nick Spencer has been seeding this story for quite a while. I mean, JJ, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the first of the animal villains getting kidnapped subplots started showing up around issue 7 or 8 of the current volume of Amazing, something like that.
Yeah, that's about right. They were teasing Craven before that, though, starting in issue 2. I remember, I want to say Comic Watchers episode number 2. I had a complete and total screaming meltdown when it was revealed to be Kraven the Hunter because it was the most telegraphed and dumb reveal ever. And that about sums up this event.
So I say that to say that Nick Spencer's clearly been plotting this for a while and planning it. And by all appearances, he's put a lot of thought into it. And then you get to the actual story, and it's just a haphazard, chaotic, incredibly poorly structured mess. The way it's structured is you'll have a main chapter in Amazing Spider-Man, but then you'll have an interlude issue next week that focuses on a villain. You had Black Cat, then the Lizard, then the Gibbon. No, Gibbon, then the Lizard, and then the last one was on the Vulture. And those they were numbered .hu. And those issues were great. They were all character focused. They were all tightly plotted. They were well constructed, well thought out. And it's just really clear reading those, like, this is the type of thing that Nick Spencer should be doing, is something with a
The Gibbon issue goddamn made me cry.
Hell yeah!
It was
It was great.
Months I've been reviewing Amazing Spider-Man for the site, that issue got my highest ratings of any issue of Amazing Spider-Man yet. Hands down. It was so poignant. It was the passion of the Gibbon. But then the way that it's structured, with every other chapter being one of these, completely destroys the flow of the story. So, yeah, like, Kraven set up this big trap in Central Park, and he's got a dome over it, and and like all the villains are trapped in there, and yeah, all of these hunters from around the world, these like weekend warrior types, these rich dudes that go and shoot a freaking elephant and then call themselves hunters, have all been brought in, and they've been given this brand spanking new toy that's been developed by Arcade. That's basically a VR controlled hunting suit so that they can run around in Central Park and shoot the animal themed villains. And it's a whole thing. And you also have the weird subplot where Kraven was in the Savage Land, cloned himself a few dozen times, and then sent them out into the wild to go learn how to be hunters, and only one of them survived because he killed all the rest, and he's like the ultimate Kraven Jr.
It's the most dangerous game.
Yeah, it's just like all this weird stuff thrown in a blender together. And the whole time this is happening, Kraven is giving this half thought out, like, wannabe bourgeois philosophizing about the nobility of the hunt, and he's going to teach all the hunters and what it really means to be a hunter, and blah, 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 blah. So meanwhile, there's actually also Spider-Man in here. And through the whole course of the story, he's really just bouncing around reacting to things. Like, Spider-Man has no agency in his own story. And then all of a sudden, you're in part 5 of the story.
He stood in the same place for like 3 issues at one point.
Yeah, that plays out for 3 issues at a go. And then all of a sudden, we're in the last chapter, and it's like Nick Spencer was like, oh shit, I've only got one more issue to wrap all of this up. So suddenly the accelerator is hit on all these plot points. We get to the last issue that came out this week, and it's like this big setup, and Kraven and Spider-Man are going to fight, and the Lizard and Kraven Jr. are going to fight, and the Vulture and the animal-themed villains are going to fight the hunters, and all 3 fell flat on their ass.
Because he just presses a button and turns it all off right when it was all about to do something.
Yeah, everything collapses. It's so poorly told. Like, I was in awe of how badly this thing came together at the end. I was honestly in shock. And yeah, just a mess. I've ranted long enough. And Cody's not here to laugh hysterically with me at it. But the art, God, I don't know what has happened to Humberto Ramos, but he has just gotten so ungodly inconsistent with his art.
He was so good for a while there.
What?
He was so good for a while there. He was
I mean, is he hyper stylized? Sure. Is it my cup of tea? No, but at least it was consistent. But I mean, the art that he did in this is so bad and so inconsistent. Like half the time Spider-Man's legs literally look like sticks with no feet on the bottom, and they're all wildly disproportionate to his rectangularly shaped torso that looks like it came from Bender. And I, I, it's awful. I mean, it's Liefeld levels of inconsistent. It honestly is, and that's so bad. I hate to compare anyone to Liefeld, but geez, Nick Spencer, when he's on a project that's right for him, he actually is so good. Like Superior Foes of Spider-Man is awesome. It is such a cult classic, and if you guys haven't read it, really, I implore you do so. It is awesome.
He only did like the first arc of that, though.
Do what?
He only did like the first arc.
No, he did the whole book. There were 2 issues, I think numbers 11 and 12, that were fill-ins because he actually thought the book was going to get canceled, and then it wasn't at the 11th hour, so they had to do some fill-in issues while he plotted out like the next 6, and then it got canceled anyway. But that and man, the Sam Wilson Captain America issues, like those are good comics, and you can tell he feels passionately about them. But I just do not remain. I am convinced that when you put him on too big of a scale, he just can't do it. He's not that writer, and it's not for lack of trying. It's just not where his strengths lie. So Hunted, big swing and a miss. I want to like Nick Spencer's Spider-Man because on one level I think he could be really good with the character, but so far like his whole run has just continuously had hints of greatness and then fallen on its face, and unfortunately Hunted is at the epitome of that. Nick, what'd you think?
I don't know if I was quite so bad on it. I was pretty hyped going into it. There were a lot of good things about it. I was excited for it. But I think what sold me most was right at the beginning, they started to explore an interesting dynamic between Craven's idea of this ethical hunting compared to what he sees in the real world now after being brought back with these poachers and basically rich assholes who just pay for guided hunts and do whatever they want. So it was interesting to see him pit these so-called rich assholes against Spidey's most notorious villains in the park. I thought he were going through something really cool and they were going to explore these dynamics in an interesting way, but they never really committed to that. Like you said, it ultimately just fell flat. And despite Craven being a great character for this too, it was all of the potential was there. There's a huge setup with tons of Spidey villains and this moral dilemma at its core, but it just feels like we're getting something great at the beginning, and then they don't take us there. Instead of taking us through this journey and exploring the different aspects of this moral dilemma, which I believe is centered around the implication of hunting in today's world, a lot of things kept going back to that. The story essentially offers an easy out or a free pass for the moral compass itself to just stop existing, which is exactly what I didn't want to happen with this story. So Craven can just change his mind, and none of you thought what matters actually matters. An example of this at the end of 22 that just came out this week are those poachers and rich assholes at the end just being like, so it's over, we can go home now, and they take off their stuff and leave. Like that plot line is just dropped. And I think that speaks to a lot of this arc. There was a huge build up, and it just slowly dwindled into nothing. Nick, I'm actually a fan of Nick Spencer. I thought he's done some good stories. He's a big idea man. He gets people talking about all of his stories, and I love that. But he said this one was a swing and a miss for me. I'm not so hard on the art because he is stylized, and though the end got a bit inconsistent, there were a lot of pages that I really enjoyed. Oddly enough, Vulture had a good few pages in there that I thought were pretty well done. But other than that, it was just big swing and a miss. Like you said, that ultimately sums it up pretty well. It was a great idea, just didn't follow through. John, go ahead.
Oh, all right. So it's been coming out over the course of a couple of months, so you'll forgive me if I forget a couple details. Um, this story is just yet another part of Nick Spencer's, and hilariously, I was reviewing Spider-Man before Matt was. I couldn't take it anymore and foisted it off on some new jerk who was Matt. Um, I'm kidding. I liked Matt initially as well. Whatever.
Initially.
Okay, so, and this is just yet another instance of Nick Spencer taking about a 3-year window in Spider-Man's history and making all of his stories about it. In the first arc, we had Strom, we had the Tri-Sentinel, we had we had Kurt Connors coming back. All of these things were gigantic in 1992. In about maybe Amazing Spider-Man 320 through maybe 340, and then during McFarlane's run on the solo-titled Spider-Man series, which started in 1991. So that is
careful what you say about the Tri-Sentinel, man. Tri-Sentinel rules.
He was in 3 stories that forgotten for 20 years.
Yeah, but it still rules.
Oh no, I was excited to see the Tri-Sentinel. It's just Spider-Man the series is hooked almost entirely on these, and then we ran into Marla. We had the Jameson arc, which, was it 4 issues? Oh yeah, there was the Thieves. That was completely forgotten almost immediately. Black, again, hinging heavily on his relationship with Black Cat, which was the late 80s, early 90s. And then we get into J. Jonah Jameson's, arc, which was the Big Man, which was the late 60s, and then also hinged heavily on his wife Marla, who is the early 80s. So again, he's just this pretty small window, and this story hinges completely on Kraven's Last Hunt. And very, very, it's strange. You have to try to reference a story as poorly as this arc has. It's like it'll throw a panel in there, and then a random panel that has nothing to do with it, and then for some reason Spider-Man's in his black suit, and it's not even. Is it even mentioned after the first time? He's like, "Well, guess I'm in my black suit." Okay.
Yeah, that's never explained. It's just fan service and a reference to Kraven's Last Hunt. Same thing with Vermin getting thrown in there.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Vermin's in it. Vermin gets cloned. There's 20 Vermins. Then the Vermins get chased off and are not seen again.
They're just gone. That entire plot thread is just dropped.
I mean, I'm sure they'll show up in a throwaway scene or a single issue later. Also interesting to think about is the fact that when the force field goes up, there is an army of fully armed, pissed off supervillains in the middle of New York City. Like dozens of them. That is funny to me. And that's not even getting into the fact that a large number of the heroes or the villains that were kidnapped are, dead or retired, or like the Armadillo was in there. Armadillo died in like Cap 314.
Yeah, but he's been back.
Has he?
Yeah, he was in. Actually, I want to say he was in Spencer's run on Cap. Yeah, he was in the Sam Wilson issues, and I know Bendis used him at some point in Avengers.
Clone Conspiracy. That's what happened.
Yeah, there you go. It's an excuse to undo the Scourge story from 30 plus years ago.
Clone's Conspiracy is a genius. Well, I think that's all I have to say about that, really. Maybe we do Feature Watch real quick. It sounds like Nick's got a jet real quick. You got 5 more minutes, Nick?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so for, I guess, what I'm reading right now, I'm catching up on Swamp Thing from Scott Snyder. Everybody talks about Alan Moore's run and everything and how iconic that was, but I'm going back through Snyder's run. The deluxe edition hardcover is just really great stuff. And
nice.
Series comes out, like I said, this Friday, so I'm ready for it. But part of what I'm looking forward to, again, it's The Walking Dead. Whatever happened at the end of last issue with Rick getting shot, we're about to find out, and I am so here for it. Matt, what about you?
I have been I've been reading a bunch of old Legions from the early 80s. It's before Paul Levitz, but after Superboy leaves the team. So it's Jerry Conway, and then I don't know what happened with Conway. Like I guess he was taken off the book or something, because then it just magically becomes Roy Thomas right in the middle of a story. It's super fun, old school heroics, and I just like it. It's got so much old school charm to it. The art is a little lackluster by today's standards, but at the same time, it's sturdy enough. I don't think a lot of those kind of middle of the run Bronze Age artists get enough credit for just being solid visual storytellers. And this book definitely falls within it. Oh, it's also got completely out of nowhere Steve Ditko drawing some of the issues. Man was just totally at random. Like if I showed you a random page, you'd never guess that it was Ditko. He's well past his prime by that point. But sure enough, the co-creator of Spider-Man was drawing Legion. Crazy as it sounds. And then what I'm looking forward to, since Nick talked up Walking Dead, which is totally what I wanted to talk about. The Green Lantern, which continues to be highly impressive, comes out next week, and it's a reunion of the original hard-traveling heroes, Green Lantern and Green Arrow. I cannot wait to see what Grant Morrison does with it. John, how about you?
Well, as for what I've been reading, I started reading Superman starting at Crisis on Infinite Earths. So, a lot of Byrne, the early Wolfman. What started it was I got the first run of Wolfman Ordway Adventures of Superman, which is 424 through 435. And that got me started reading Action Comics starting at 575, which is the first issue after Crisis, and then Superman #1. And I'm about, 50 issues into reading all three Superman series all told. I'm like 15 issues into each run. I also read Millennium as part of that because and Legends. I read Legends and Millennium as part of that just because they're crossovers. Millennium I liked a lot less than Legends.
I've always heard Millennium is pretty bad, but by comparison, I've really never heard much of anything about Legends. I know it was their first big event comic post-Crisis, and it was kind of John Ostrander's big breakthrough at DC.
I like Legends.
In that it also introduced the Suicide Squad. But
both of the series are almost completely useless without the tie-ins. Which it's like they're Millennium in particular was weekly and tied into every ongoing series at the time, meaning that you read week 1 and then you have to read like Justice League,
every
Suicide
DC
Squad,
book that came out,
Batman, Superman, and then you read week 2 and then you got to read Action, Detective, so Booster Gold, I like that Booster Gold series, but it's really annoying because I was reading it on the DC app and it's not collected properly on the app, so it's a lot of kind of exit out of a tab, open a tab, exit out of a tab, open a tab, and
that sucks.
So it was a pain in the ass. And I had a trade paperback of the main series, and so I was reading the main series. The main series is basically nonsense without reading the tie-ins. The best example is issue 4 of the main series ends with them gearing up to go to the Manhunter's home planet and do some shit, and they're all like, all right, it's time to gear up and get this done. And then the next issue starts with them getting back and going, well, that was a rough battle.
That sounds like Invasion. Have you read that?
It's like 6 months out from where I'm at in Superman right now.
Okay, so it's 3 issues. All of them are 80 pages, but it's exactly like that.
Yeah.
To a T, except it's 80 fucking pages an issue. Although McFarlane does the art in the first one.
Neat.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Right. Well, if that's all, I guess that does it for the show this week.
I guess
Thanks
that's
for
it.
listening.
Kind of a weird show this week, but we pulled it off.
Nick says
I
bye.
said narrative because Cody wasn't here.
um, well, thanks for watching as always. You can find us on, YouTube. Obviously, this is a YouTube show, but we also upload audio to Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes. If you're listening to this, you know where to find us. And if you have a podcasting app that we are not on and you'd like to see us on it, let us know and we can probably make that happen if there's one you like to use. Well, thank you and bye.
Bye.